We are going to start our PLC meeting today, going over my vision statement for my students, and then we're going to discuss a problem that one of my students has been having recently, and I have implemented an intervention to help her succeed and have more success in social situations. We'll discuss the baseline data that I took before implementing the intervention, and we'll also go over a summary of the implementation of the intervention and to see if there was any growth. I'll also talk about the next steps of what we're going to continue doing with the intervention, and we're going to end with a group activity. So we'll go ahead and get started with my vision statement for my classroom. My vision is to guide my students to learn at their highest potential. My students will arrive at school excited about the day because they know they will have an abundance of opportunities for learning and growth. Students will receive instruction that is meaningful and appropriate to their individual needs. My students will use the supports provided by my team to succeed academically, socially, and emotionally. My team will be led in research-based strategies for students with autism, so these students can gain and obtain skills and concepts necessary to succeed in and outside of school. Most importantly, students will view my classroom as a welcoming and safe environment where they feel loved and understood. My ultimate vision is to see my students gain confidence and independence as they receive the supports needed for them to be successful with their same-age peers. So, my main focus problem for this project is with my student in second grade with autism. She struggles a lot in social situations, and it impacts her not only socially, but it also negatively impacts her in the classroom. She won't join in with peers and does not initiate conversation with her peers. So at recess, I have observed her often standing by the fence with her head down, or she watches her peers from a distance. And it's affecting her progress, like I said, academically, socially, and emotionally. So I wanted to start off by targeting this in social situations like recess, lunch, and classroom parties. So the strategy that I have implemented, well, before we get to that, I want all of you all to think of one student you know that struggles in social situations. Just list the student's social deficits on the note cards on your table. And we will need these cards for later, so just set them aside once you think of a student and their social deficits. Okay, so the strategy I've implemented with this student is called peer-mediated intervention. It's the most supported type of intervention for students with autism. When implemented, social and academic gains increase for students with autism. And this intervention involves teaching typical peers ways to interact with students with autism to help the students make social gains in their natural environment. Okay, so I researched an article called Peer-Mediated Instruction and Intervention Strategies for Students with Autism Spectrum Disorders. And this article pretty much broke the intervention down into steps and taught ways to implement this intervention with students. And from this article, I learned that students with autism have fewer opportunities to participate in social situations and to practice and acquire social and play skills, which autism is a social disability, so they should be having more opportunities to participate in situations and activities that help with their social skills. I also learned from this article that social skills aren't likely to develop just by placing a student with autism in the general ed classroom. We have to be, implementing strategies to help these students succeed. It's not just putting them with their peers, and you have to teach them, how to approach their peers. Plus, you have to teach the peers, too, ways to interact with kids with autism. So, the steps for peer-mediated intervention involve, first, teaching typical peers about recognizing and appreciating individual differences. You discuss similarities and differences of children with ASD and introduce strategies with these typical peers, and then you practice these strategies with them. For children ages 3 to 8, ways that you can introduce these children to autism is just organizing play situations, being there to provide assistance, provide affection and praise not only to the student with autism, but to their peers as well, because they're young and they need that feedback, that positive feedback. The peers practice skills in a structured teaching session with the child with ASD. And then, once they master this, they can go on and initiate play with the peer in a natural setting without those adult supports. And so I'm going to share with you how we did this with our student. Initially, the student, when peers initiated play with the student would whine and shake her head no. She would often turn away and refuse to play with her peers. So, I tried social narratives with the student, I tried adult prompting, and there was still, she still refused to play with them. So I thought I needed to implement a different strategies, which is why I chose peer-mediated intervention. So day 1, I collected baseline data. And this is when I discussed what it meant to be a peer buddy with students, with the typical peers. And then day 2, I taught peers to recognize and appreciate individual differences. We talked about likes and dislikes, appearances, how we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And this is when I also taught students about autism, using the Autism Awareness Unit. And this was a unit I found online from the Autism Helper. Day 3, I taught peers in a structured setting, and I offered specific feedback, praise, and I modeled for them what to do. We practiced playing Simon Says while implementing strategies. So we would role play. One of us would pretend to be the student with autism, and then the other ones would implement those strategies I taught them. Day 4, we practiced the same game and routine with the student in a one-on-one setting. And I also prepared the student with autism, prepared her that her peers were going to be asking her to play. Day 5, the peers played a game with the student in a structured setting with the adult there to offer prompting. Okay, and I continued this into week 2. Day 6, the students initiated playing with the student with autism at recess. And they were able to do this without adult prompting, and it was successful. The student engaged in play with her peers. Day 7, students initiate play with students with autism at recess without adult prompting. This day was not as successful. She went back to refusing to play with her peers, so I decided to modify the plan. We did the same thing at recess, but I allowed the student with autism choices of what to play, because every student at recess has a choice of what they want to play. And so when I gave her choices, then she was more willing and motivated to engage and play with her peers. So this is just a chart of days 4 through 9. You can see that once this strategy was implemented, the student was more willing to engage and was excited to engage and play. These 2 days, this was when I think she was getting bored of the game that we were having her play each day, so that's when I offered choices, and she went back to agreeing to engage in play. So this is our graph to show days 1 through 4, there were 0 minutes of engagement with peers. Day 5 and 6, we had a total of 5 minutes of appropriate engagement. Day 7 and 8, that's when I had to modify the plan again. And days 9 and 10, we had 10 minutes of appropriate play with peers. So this just shows, this is just 9 days of implementing the strategy, and there is growth. So we will discuss next steps for this intervention. We're going to continue introducing the peers and students, the student with ASD, to new games and activities. We're going to also increase the duration of time that she will engage with peers. And as she becomes more independent and successful engaging with her peers during social times, we're going to start training the peers to help her participate in classroom discussions and assignments. For example, when the class splits up to do Think, Pair, Share, students will be taught to share with the student and ask her a question that she can be successful answering. So, to wrap things up, I want you all to revisit your note card and write down one way you think a peer could help the student that you thought of. And I am going to help implement this strategy with the student, and so that we can reach out to other students and help them be successful. Thank you all.